Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. We're just getting started and I can see people are still joining us. So while everyone is joining us, please introduce yourself in the chat box, your name, your organisation, and just one word that describes how you're feeling right now. Just one word, how are you feeling? I can see that my cats have woken up and are on the prowl, so I'm feeling rather nervous at the moment as they recently, well, this morning, they knocked over my webcam and as they made a lunge for a bird flying past the window. I thought I'd warn them out, but clearly not. So welcome everyone. Overwhelmed, totally get it, Nicole. Absolutely. It's some time, isn't it? Hi, Eloise. More cats, please. Yeah, well, you may have, your wish may come true. You'll certainly probably hear them because she's sitting on the edge of my table at the moment. Quite happy today. Oh, that's nice, Zoe. That's great. That's what we like, and a wee smiley face. Oh, Alice, frazzled, no wonder. I know you were up doing pitching competitions last night. Feeling expectant. Okay, good. Hopefully there'll be interesting things for you today. Hi, Laura. Feeling chipper, bamboozled. Great word, Jenny. Great. Toasty. Ah, nice. Well, it's snowing here. I'm not sure I'm toasty. There's a few cozy folk. Ellie, that's see now. I thought Exeter was going to be more warm. I thought Glasgow, where I'm based, would be the chilly place. Hi, Ken. Feeling relaxed to overwhelmed. Yeah, mood swings, isn't it? Snow, hungry. Yeah, it's definitely lunchtime webinars, eh? Homeschooling, enough said, I think, Becca. Okay, lots of people looking forward to it. Fantastic. Yeah, Stephen, get that heating on. See, that's a great thing about webinars. You can wander off, and not that I'm suggesting that you do that, but you can wander off. Feeling safe. Oh, that's good. Glad to hear. I hope people are feeling safe. All right. Okay. Well, I think we've all worked out that you need to select all panelists and attendees for everyone to be able to see your chat, I think. Ruth is juggling, yes, but not literally. Although that could be kind of fun as well. Okay, so this month we're going to go a little bit deeper into a topic. So instead of having multiple guests, we're going to have a deeper dive into how to get researchers to sign up for your courses. And to help with that, we're providing you with a handy handout that you'll find hopefully in the chat box. We'll probably put it into the chat box a couple of times just to make sure that people are able to pick it up. And it's got some useful tips and there's a worksheet as well that you can use if you're planning marketing for events. You can also find that on our website in the resources section. It's on there. I've got some great questions for our guest today, and I'd be delighted if you have questions, then please absolutely do jot them into the chat box. I'll do my best to ask them. And please do use the chat box as ever to share your comments and your queries. And we usually have lots of chat going on at the side. It's a great place for sharing ideas. And we get some top tips from you all, basically, often. Now, our aim with today's webinar is to give you some tips, tools, and experiences that might be useful for you. We've been running these CPD webinars now since 2019, and I'm delighted to see some old friends here and some new faces. It's okay, don't worry, I can't actually see you just in case you're having a wee panic there. A big welcome to everyone who's here for the first time. A particular shout out to Exeter. I see we've got quite a lot of attendees from Exeter, so that's lovely. Thanks for joining us. I hope you find the session useful. So just to warm us up, before we get started, I'd like to hear a little bit more from you before we launch into the webinar. So over the last few months, we've been sharing some weird and wonderful exchanges, from haircuts to Zoom interruptions. Last time our webinar was around about Halloween, so you told us about your best ever fancy dress costume. This time, as we've just did Christmas, it feels like a while ago now, but I would like to hear from you. What's been your favourite present you've ever received. It doesn't have to be a Christmas present, but what's been your favourite present that you've ever received? And please do describe it to us in the chat. I think for me, it's a toss-up. So I love reading and books, and I also enjoy a bit of nostalgia. So my favourite present was for Christmas from my parents when I was 3 years old. It's a big hardback book of fairy tales inscribed to their best girl ever. To be fair, I'm their only girl, but you've got to take any praise you can get. Still got it on my bookshelf. So what about you? Maybe it was a cool gadget, a longed for toy, or something even more exciting. Oh, there's some cool ones here. First guitar, 1969. No, Ken. You must have just been like 1 or 2. Tickets to the Globetrotters, that's pretty cool. A greyhound, Alice. Tickets to hear Catherine Jenkins. Oh, fantastic. Oh, well, that's something to look forward to, Kay. A horse, wow, that's amazing. A Paul Daniels magic kit. So we've got a right variety here. A Mr. Frosty. Briefcase spy kit. I see, I'd have loved that, Lewis. Fake passports, currencies, fingerprint powder, brilliant. Cuddly mouse. Actually, I could just stay here all day. Look at this. Your nurse registration. Wow, that's a pretty cool present. You're an actual bike of your own, Emma. I know the feeling. I've got 2 older brothers. Oh, book of memories. That's lovely. That's lovely. Oh, there's some just lovely things here. A truly hideous squirrel crimbo decoration. Yeah, fantastic. Amazing. A horror-themed t-shirt this Christmas. Yeah, ready for the zombie apocalypse, Charlotte. Fantastic. All right, lots of interesting things there. Please do keep going, but I'm going to move on with the webinar, although I could, to be honest, I could sit and converse with you this way all day. But let me just take us into the webinar now. So our goal from today really is for you to pick up some new ideas, perhaps a fresh perspective, a new approach, some practical tips that will allow you to create an action as a result of this, that will help you keep moving forward. And, for me, I think that would be a good use of an hour from my point of view. So just a few guidelines for the webinar to help everyone get the most out of it. We're recording it and the link will be available after the webinar. Please do share. And we try and share the chat box as well. So type questions and comments in the chat box and make them public so that everyone can see them, or you can send them to us privately just so that we can see. But I would go with the default of public, because then we can share any top tips and conversations that are going on. I'm afraid you're on mute, so I can't hear you. It should be a pretty jam-packed 60 minutes. We've got a file shared in the chat box as well, or a kind of link to a file, and that's the handy tips sheet for when you're thinking about marketing programs. It's an action plan that you can use, and our speaker has provided this for us, and although we won't be working through it specifically today, it's just a handy reminder for you during our conversation today. So why are we doing this? Well, to be honest, we like bringing people together to learn. That's kind of what we do as a training company. That's what we do. We've got lots of contact with lots of different universities and lots of different people within them who are finding ways to develop researchers. So we've got the reach to facilitate a conversation. And also we want to support the community. And right now it feels super important. And I think it really helps us all to feel a little bit more connected. I already feel more connected having seen all your chat in the chat box. So who are we? Well, we're Skillfluence. We've been around for around 4 years. We've trained more than 7,000 researchers and academics and PhD students. We've got an amazing range of trainers, real subject matter experts, and we've got some of them in chat box duty today. And we work with more than 50 universities and research centres and institutes across the UK and Europe. And we really focus on supporting and developing researchers to look outwards. giving them practical skills that will help them learn how to communicate, to collaborate, innovate, and work with or in industry and business and startups and social enterprises. Basically, for us, it's all about helping them to make a difference. Right now, we're fully online, but usually we're a bit of a mix of online and in person. I'm Alison Gray. I founded Skillfluence about 5 years ago after spending time on sabbatical in the US. And when I came back, I set up Skillfluence. And I've got 3 of my colleagues here today. I've got Zach Sorrells, who's on tech support. I've got Joanne Haggerty, who's on chatbox duty. And for a bit of a change, we have Rachel Clark, our training operations manager, on front of house duty. Usually behind the scenes, but today here to share her experience of marketing programs and share some of our top tips. So please let me introduce our guest speaker, Rachel Clark, who's usually busy working behind the scenes as Skillfluence training operations manager, making sure everything runs smoothly. I'm delighted she's here to speak to me today, as otherwise it'd be a very one-sided conversation. No, as I think actually you'll find her experience and her tips really useful, and I'm hoping it'll generate plenty of chat in the chat box. Rachel's got a huge amount of experience in researcher development, having joined us from her previous role at the University of Strathclyde and the Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Centre. A few of you will know her already. She's no stranger to marketing, having been responsible for marketing many a programme and event in her roles. But let's hear some more about that from Rachel herself. So welcome, Rachel. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm just going to stop sharing my presentation screen so that you can see us all there. So welcome, Rachel. Please tell us a wee bit about your background.
Thanks, Alison, and hello to everybody out there. I hope you enjoy the session today. So as Alison indicated there, I've just joined Skillfluence in April, and my career started with a research degree, a PhD at Strathclyde in drug discovery, and then 6 years of postdocing in a similar field. But I realized quite quickly that research wasn't for me. And towards the end of my last postdoc, I was actually looking after a facility that aimed to bring together different chemists and biologists from all around the world. And I really felt that my passion lay with not only collaboration and talking to people, but making sure that the fantastic research that was happening in labs all around the world got out and became useful. So it was really before I knew what the term knowledge exchange was that I realized that was where my passion was. So I kind of did a little bit of a portfolio change. So I kept my research on and started migrating towards the research and knowledge exchange centrally within the university and into business development. And one of the things I had a real success with was events that brought together researchers in a particular discipline with people they thought they might want to work with. And that's really how my main professional services career started, with some success in events.
All right, interesting. So I suspect that might resonate, being a researcher and then sort of thinking, actually, I want to move into a different type of role. I suspect that might resonate with a few folk here today. What's your experience then of marketing events and training? Because that's not your background. So what's your experience of it?
No, not at all. As I say, I had some early success in the life sciences sector, particularly in stem cell research and cancer research, just bringing together researchers who just didn't even know where to start with connecting with industry, and finding some people for them to talk to share that platform, and really started to understand that as a researcher, you really you want to push your research out onto other people. But in fact, there might not be such an appetite for that. So you really have to start thinking about what's the draw from the other side. So the success in the life sciences sector was noticed at the university, and I actually had the remit to work across all disciplines within the university in a fully funded program called Engage with Strathclyde. And this was an annual series of events. We used to get about 100 applications a year from academic and research groups, even some professional services staff who identified their own knowledge exchange objectives. and they came to us for support to hold an event, and the events took place all over a week. So it was a really intense period of work, and I had to aim to get maybe 2,500 to 3,000 people into the university to these events.
Wow.
70 or so different subjects. And I realized quite quickly that people who aren't marketeers find it really difficult to market to their audience. So I very quickly had to work out what worked and help other people to understand. And it's really that process. Hey, there's a cat. It's really that process of just trial and error that made me gain some experience, and hopefully some of the tips that I've collected along the way will help other people just in the mindset of how to go about this.
Okay, all right, that's great. I can only imagine what it must be like to run 70 events all in the space of 1 week. I bet that's a sleepless week, that one, I would imagine. All right. Well, okay, we've got a poll for folk that we'd like to run, just to hear from you in the audience. So on a scale of 1 to 5, we're interested to find out, how confident are you in marketing programs and events? So on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in marketing programs and events? Where I should tell you what the scale, it does tell you on there what the scale is. So 1 is not at all confident, 5 very confident. And we'll share that in a minute. We've got that still going up, still people voting. Give you another couple of seconds. I think the voting is slowed. I think you've all had your chance to have your say. Let's share that. Great. Okay, so we can see, yeah, I suppose it's a bell-shaped curve. Who would have known? Who would have known? But yeah, no, that's interesting. So people kind of feel quite in the middle about it. There's not many folk that are feeling very confident about marketing. So it's something that perhaps isn't a kind of an easy thing for folk to do. And so there's not a huge amount of confidence about it. Plus, it's hard. And that's my next question to you. I'll just close down that poll. So, you've marketed lots and lots of programs and events. Why is it so hard?
I think for me, there's 2 things that to remember there. One is that a lot of people in the roles that will be in the audience here are not marketeers, they're not trained marketeers. So having that task as part of a day job that's really busy is always going to be tricky. And I think the second thing, and the thing that you can really get over quite quickly, is actually putting yourself in the mindset of the attendee, because you are probably going to be really passionate about the event or training program that you're trying to market, because you think it's a great idea already. And the trick is then to ensure that your potential attendees think the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, because like if you're running an event, you've got a reason for running it. It may be that you're passionate about it. It may be that you have to do it, but there's a good, strong reason that's pushing you to do it. But that reason might well be different to the reason why someone would come to the event. Yeah. So would you say you find it easy to be a marketeer? Would you describe yourself as a natural, Rachel?
No, absolutely not. I think I think I'm developing skills in writing, but my skills are very much logic and process driven. And I think the thing that I've been able to do is show that with a little bit of process and logic and following a plan and some experience, you can really make a big difference in the numbers of people who engage with the marketing content and then go on to register and attend.
Yeah, I have to admit, I love having a process for things, especially things where you're not naturally good at it. If at least you've got a framework that you can work on, and that's what's nice. I think we've got that top tips document that we've shared, and I think that'll be helpful for people to get started with marketing. So that's kind of my next question to you. Really, is how do you get started? Where do you start?
I think for me, it's going back and revisiting the reason that you're putting the event or training on. So looking back and understanding what the strategic objective was that drove you to design that event or commission that training, and really focusing back on that and finding that passion again for the reason that you think this is going to be successful, and then thinking to yourself, okay, what would success look like? I've planned this event, I've commissioned this training. What do I want it to achieve? Who do I want to attend? What are my long-term outcomes, impact from this training? And start going back and thinking about that in more detail.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you work out what a successful event actually looks like? And do you have any examples that you could share just to give people some real world examples?
Yeah, sure. So, so this audience might have strategic objectives that resonate with them. So it could be you're running a CDT program and you need all of your students to submit on time. So you might be looking to commission some training that teaches them about time management, project management, writing skills, and it's about choosing when in their PhD they might be interested in taking up that opportunity. So if your strategic objective is getting them finished on time, but your event actually takes place in the middle of their training, you're not going to be able to align the success until much further down the line. So you need to come back a bit and think, actually, I need to upskill 20 PhD students because they need to start building on that to reach my final strategic objective. So it's then being realistic about what the training or event might achieve. So if it might be all of my second year CDT students should attend. So you'll be able to know that as soon as the training's underway. That's quite a different outcome to they all need to finish on time. So that's an example of what to me a successful event would be. Following that, there would be different interventions that would actually get them to that end point, but it's about revisiting the why for that group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of really understanding and matching it against what can reasonably be expected from the event or the program that you're putting in place. Okay. I'm just going to mention that if anyone's got any questions, please do feel free to pop them in the chat box, and I will do my best to ask them. But I've got loads of questions, so because I find this fascinating, because I think it's a tough thing to do, but it's also quite interesting because it's about people and how to gain buy-in. So I find that fascinating. So I see in the handout that one of the sections is about who it's for. So how do you, and that sounds like it should be really obvious, but that's not always the case. I think that example you gave where it's maybe a CDT manager, they know who they've got to direct that at. Even then, there's quite often grey areas about, do we open it up anyway? So how do you work out who should attend an event or a training program, and why should they care?
Yeah, so who should attend, you would expect to be reasonably straightforward, especially again for this audience who may have their funding restricted to a certain type of member of staff or a certain discipline, or as you say, within a CDT. But you might also have an objective, and one I was thinking about was if you're working in the knowledge exchange or impact acceleration area, you might have a university strategic objective to increase the number of startups or spin-outs that the university supports. So in that case, you might have a much wider audience that you want to attract. So it could even be, certainly at Strathclyde, we supported alumni as well. So you might be looking for an audience of really enthusiastic students who might want to think about what they do next. You might have a group of early career researchers or academics. They could be in any discipline, or then you could be going out to alumni all over the world. So when you're telling people within the marketing copy who it's for, then prioritize who that is. because if you say this is for PhD students, early career researchers, academics, professionals, and you start a list and you're the group at the bottom of the list, I'm just not sure that I would feel that this was really for me. So really think about the order that you start engaging people with if this is one very general piece of content. And I think the harder part is the why should that person care? And that's the really tricky part for me. And it's to think about, as I touched on earlier, thinking about the why from their perspective. So if you want to increase the number of startups and spin-outs, there's only so much you can do there. It's the academic or the researcher who has the capability to actually do that for you. So it's about understanding that audience, and it might be through a little bit of market research. You might have a group of people that you've already engaged with, but it's finding out a little bit from them about what their roadblocks are, perhaps to making that happen. Are they looking for extra support? Are they looking for time in life to be able to do this? Are they just not sure of how to go about this? So once you know the real roadblock, you can start incorporating that into your advertising. So you could say something like, if you've got an idea that you're wanting to pursue, come and talk to us. We can give you X, Y, and Z support. And it's about getting that message, that the thing that's making them query whether it's for them up front.
Yeah. So it's that kind of problem solution, isn't it? Often it's kind of like, do you find it, are you concerned about finishing your PhD on time? Then, time management might be for you, or, so it's kind of really understanding them. And that can take a while, because I think sometimes, we've found we might make an assumption about what the problem is, but actually that's not what it is. It's something else. So it's really kind of getting to know your group. And I noticed that Ruth Gripper said she works in knowledge exchange, and they always try to get that balance, to have something that's wide enough to attract a good sized audience, but also tailored and focused. And it is a balancing act, and some of that's, I guess, about experience. I don't know if you've got any kind of comments on that.
Yeah, I think that's about the different types of messaging. So you might want something really broad to catch all. And then you might want to very specifically use a particular target or channel for that one group. So if you need to increase numbers from a certain department, I know there's a real drive on social sciences at the moment to work outside of academia, work in collaboration with people. So it might be actually diving down into that channel and making a very specific version for them. But your main landing page, where your call to action is bringing them back to a page to register, that could be quite generic, but that the message that they're responding to could be specific to them.
Yeah, so it could well be multiple specific messages. Okay, I'm going to go back because we had a great question from Eloise, and lots of people have gone, yes, great question. And it is indeed a very good question. And it's just
got the chat up to distract me, so.
And basically, she's saying that we struggle with attendance. So you get the sign up and you're like, yay, we've managed to get the 30 that we need or the 20 that we need. And then you've got this dropout rate before the event. And she's mentioned that particularly at free events, and I know we've had conversations with customers about, should we put a charge in that they can then get paid back? We've never ended up doing anything like that. Have you got any tips for encouraging people to attend once they're actually signed up?
Yeah, I think a couple of things spring to mind. So the first is making sure you have the right people, because it could be really easy to get people to sign up. I mean, you can offer sweets or whatever it is to get them to sign up, but that's actually not necessarily going to target the right audience. And as they get closer to it and think, is this going to be a good use of my time? Because don't forget, people need to stop what they're doing to join that event, whether it's online or in person. So making sure you have the right people first will give you a higher chance of seeing that through. The other opportunity, if you have the resource, is to keep the conversation going. So if you have, you know, the launch, which gets the registrations, if you're then quiet for 2, 3, 4 weeks, it could give people the opportunity to lose it from their mind, to think actually something else has come up. But perhaps by keeping that conversation going and, you know, keeping that relevance alive in their mind, they might think, actually, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to make sure I've got some time and space to engage with it.
Yeah, we actually, the pair of us had a conversation yesterday, didn't we, with someone who's running a course, and they were concerned about this, and we've got some speakers for the programme, and we were saying, well, maybe we could sort of drip feed and tell them about, you know, sort of 3 weeks before we'll tell them about this speaker that's coming along, and it just helps you to kind of keep that conversation going. You know, so yeah, a little bit of drip feeding.
Yeah, and the other thing, just before we move on from that, is it also helps engage people who might not be able to come for whatever reason, but they'll still get in touch with you and say, actually, I'm really sorry, I'm going to miss this event, this speaker. Can I actually keep in touch with you? And we saw that a lot through Engage with Strathclyde. So they might not be able to make that specific date and time, and that was a physical journey to Strathclyde from, you know, we got people from all over the world. But for the academics and researchers, it was actually just valuable to have that link, you know, so it could be a student or a researcher who can't join us this time, but are really keen to be told about the next time.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've got some fabulous questions coming in. This is from Ken, I think, and he's just asking, yeah, it's from Ken Scott. He's asking about targeting the audience. And by the way, you might not have all the answers to this, Rachel, so I'm just going to say in the chat box, if anyone's got any kind of ideas as well, please do share them. So any ideas on how to, you know, make sure that you've got a kind of optimal blend of people. So you might be looking for technical specialists who senior people might look to for advice, versus senior execs who've got authority and responsibility. You know, so sometimes you want to make sure it's quite a mixed audience, I would imagine, particularly for events or facilitated events.
Yeah, and that goes back to specific messaging. So you might have certain messages that target one group. So I can't stress enough that if you feel that message isn't resonating with you because you're coming at it from a different angle, then you're likely not to think that the event's for you. I'd also maybe warn about the specificity of event. In some cases, it's really important to have a specific focus. And if you're getting a wide range of interest, then it could be that you might need to hold with two different aspects as well. I know some people that we've worked with are very keen to have a PhD focused and level of content, and other people are happy with a mixed content. So it might also be that if it's not sounding realistic for the audience to be mixed, that you could also try multiple events or focus groups, and have a celebration event at the end that draws in all of those fields as well. So it might be that the design of the event or training, you could look at what would actually be the most beneficial.
Yeah, okay. I think it's just like lots of kind of useful food for thought, and you know, some things will, you know, not be possible for everyone to do because it's resource and time dependent, isn't it? But at the same time, you know, sometimes there is time or there is resource or there's support to do that, which allows you to kind of be more focused and put more out there. So we realise that it's hard. We're not expecting you to be able to do everything, I think is what we're saying, but just some tips that might be useful. Yeah,
I think it's good to be critical about what the success looks like. So going back to that and actually thinking, you know, if I get much closer to my target by doing it this way, then it might be better to build on than try and cover it all in one go. You know, it might be worth a try something different.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think we've got to keep on trying different things. Actually, it reminded me of when we were talking about, you know, getting people signed up. Sometimes there's not an issue with getting lots of people signed up, just for some courses, but there may be, you're not sure who's going to be the folk that will actually attend when we're looking at that gap between registration and attendance. We quite often talk about building in wiggle room. So if you've kind of got space for 30 people, I'd be suggesting you get maybe 36 people sign up. One of the courses that we run it regularly for a university, and we know that it's kind of almost without fail, there's a 1/3 drop off between registration and attendance. So we just book an extra third of people on, and it pretty much always works out quite nicely. Right. Okay, I'm gonna move on. I'll check back through the chat and just see if there's anything else there. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about was communication channels and what kind of different channels that you might use to market training events. Do you use like social media, or is it kind of more sort of usual routes like email? What would you recommend?
I think it's knowing where your audience listens, and again, if the audience today are looking after a particular CDT, then there'll probably be a direct route that the students will be ready to listen to, and so it really depends on your audience for me, and you might want multiple channels.
Mm-hmm. So if you were looking, I mean, you've got ones where they're kind of quite a specific group. So like Impact Accelerator accounts might know who their audience is. Well, that can still be quite wide ranging. What about for researcher developers who are managing all the students or all the researchers or all the academics in the university? When it's such a wide group of people, how might you channel that?
I think you would be looking to cascade as well. So you'll have your different routes for different departments or CDTs. They will in turn have their own ways of engaging through channels, again, that they would recognize. And I think it's also about a trusted voice. So if you're quite removed from the person who's going to attend, then by hearing it from somebody that they trust could also help. So that kind of cascade approach, if you're central to the university, then having your network of more local contacts perhaps within the department, who will then know how to reach people on their Facebook group or directly by email. So that's another good tip, is actually not taking on all of this yourself, but actually finding an intermediate group of people who are much closer to the attendees.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Share the joy of reaching your audience.
Absolutely.
Okay. I was going to say we've got another poll actually for everyone. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what channels you use. So we're just about to put up a poll asking what channels do you use, and I think you can choose all that apply. But also, if you choose other, which is right at the bottom there, if you choose other, if you don't mind, please just jot into the chat box what other route you're talking about, because we couldn't put them all on there, and we thought actually you might have ideas that we hadn't considered. So please, if there's other things that you use, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts. What's the something else? Just giving you a few seconds to, because there's quite a few to read through. It's fun because you can't see this, but I can sit and look at all the kind of like who's answering what and what's in the lead. That's interesting. All right, I think probably, yeah, great. Can share. So as you can see, personal emails, and I think that's great. See, that's what you were talking about, Rachel, is that personal emails. And we can no longer do that kind of like you bump into someone in the corridor and like, oh, you should go to this. So that the personal email, I suppose, is the kind of current equivalent of that. That's interesting though. So personal emails definitely top the main university website. Newsletters, these are all top things. But that's interesting that Twitter is so well used. Must admit, I love Twitter. So and it's a nice, easy place to use. There's quite a few using LinkedIn. So I'm just pondering all the information here, because I think like Instagram, it feels like such a cool place, but actually it's not something that we really use an awful lot of. Facebook, I'm going to guess that's maybe Facebook groups that people are using as well, because maybe that's not right. I'd be interested if that's not the case, then do share that in the chat box, because I kind of think Facebook doesn't seem so strongly used as a kind of general platform for things. So let's have a look at all the different stuff. So Caroline's got directly emailing cohort of students on our programme and information via handbook. Yeah, that makes sense. So especially for things that are planned well in advance. Eventbrite, yeah, that's a goodie. And Facebook page, yeah, Insta's totally not winning. A block to sign up is when the event targets a specific career stage. Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to that. Catherine. Registered users of our resource. Oh, that's a great one, actually. Rachel, I don't know if you would maybe want, I'm burbling away here, but do you want to maybe comment on that registered users thing?
So I've not got the chat up to see the context of that, but if it's anything to do with people who are already bought into your message, like I think one of the options I put there on the poll was the email campaign to a dedicated list. If you already have people, whether they're your CDD students or people who already think you are worth listening to, then hitting those lists would be really good. So if they're registered users, same thing, they've bought into the ethos of what you're doing, whether by choice or because they have to. Yeah. That's beside the point, really. But yeah, hit the effort getting people onto those lists, I think is good effort as well, instead of always relying on people picking up things in passing.
Yeah, because if each event you're having to kind of start from scratch, especially if it's to a wide audience. Whereas if you've already got people signed up that are expressed an interest, it's a bit like this webinar. We do have, like some people have signed up and we know that they know that they'll always get notified if it's going on, basically. All right, so advertising through postdoc induction event, yeah, Twitter. Yeah, it's a good point, Joanne, actually, because you can schedule content and it means that you're not having to, you can do that drip feed, but all at the one time. Dedicated MS Teams group, yep. So Barbara's got that as well. Yeah, that's a good one, Joanne, as well, mentioning future events and current ones. You'll see that at the end of this webinar, but it is, you've kind of got the audience there that are interested in these things, and so you want to let them know about the next ones. Social media, including LinkedIn. Is there a risk of reducing the targeting and having too many people with no decision-making authority? Yeah, that could be a possibility.
That goes back to making sure you get the right people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's not so much of a problem at the moment, but we had a terrible job with free lunches. So anything that had a free lunch, you would be really surprised at the wide range of people who would come to those events, and quite often not engage wholeheartedly in the content, so yeah, it's the same thing there.
It's getting the balance though, isn't it? Because a free lunch can be if you can afford it, then that can be a very attractive thing, just as like residential events or whatever. But I like this one from Jamie. You could also ask other people, friends, contacts, if they give you a shout out in their newsletters. And that can go for, like, I guess, retweets and asking for retweets and the like. LinkedIn direct messaging. Oh, Zoe asks, what about regularity? We struggle with wanting to communicate with our PGRs and engaging them in our events, but we also worry that we're asking too much of their time. Is that, she's asking if anyone else struggles with that. Is that something that you think about, Rachel?
Too much of their time at events or in capacity for marketing, I think are kind of two different things. I think if you've got a regular correspondence with people, if it's interesting, then I think having a regular contact is absolutely fine. I would consider thinking as well of how you can bring in conversations. So I'm terrible for just listening at Twitter. I very rarely kind of interact with it or respond. It's not really, I don't do it in my personal account either. But when you see successful campaigns, they're often engaging with people who engage back. So even if that's with cohorts of students, if somebody expresses interest, then it's, you know, just having a conversation. It's so much harder now when we're not seeing people, as you say, but having that element of conversation, feeling it's personal to them and a good opportunity, understanding their drivers, that can only help.
Yeah. Okay, we've got, I'm just going back a little bit to a question that came in from Catherine Quinn, and she's just saying that sometimes a block to sign up is when events target a specific career stage. It's not the actual event content itself, it's more people are kind of like, oh, am I actually at that? What stage am I at? Is that right for me? So she's just saying, do we have any tips for how we message so that it helps people decide if they should sign up or not?
I think there's nothing wrong with being explicit about if you want to target a particular stage and just saying, you know, this is great if you're between 6 and 18 months in your PhD. I think being as specific as possible will help people to make that decision.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you make sure you get the style right for the different communication channels that you're using? Because each of them have their own tone, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say I use Google quite a lot because I'm not a huge social media user. But you know, there's as the audience will probably know more than me, there's hard and soft rules about each of the channels. So there's hard limits on characters in Twitter. They'll, you know, your university newsletter, if it was anything like Strathclyde, is 150 words, and it had to have a very specific tone, or it's rewritten for you. And that's the softer edge. So what kind of language are people expecting to see in that format? You know, Facebook groups might be more chatty, less formal, but certainly in my experience, university newsletters had a very specific voice to them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's very true, and I suppose it's really just about kind of looking back and seeing, you know, what the standard is, you know, what others are doing. I've put a wee star to myself to ask you about tracking links here, because you have mastered the tracking link, which is quite useful. Do you want to maybe tell folk what tracking links are and how you use them?
Yeah, absolutely. And this comes back to my my love for logic and process, and I really like to understand what's worked, because if it hasn't worked, I'll either look at what I'm doing wrong or not spend resource there. So for example, for this CPD webinar, I have different tracking links that Zoom generates for me for the different channels that we put the registration out through. So I've got a channel for our MailChimp, Twitter, LinkedIn, people who sign up in the previous webinar, and that just gives a really good insight as to how successful each channel is, and what you might do differently or what you might concentrate on. So I love them.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. Start Googling tracking links to see how you can, if you can track how people are signing up for your events, and where they're finding out about them. Just a quick question around the kind of channels thing, just a final question. In your experience, is it enough to just use one channel?
I think, again, it depends on the audience. I mean, if you're targeting a specific group of students who expect this information in their handbook or through personal emails, then you'll probably not find too many others through Twitter. If you have a much broader audience to attract, then you might want to choose multiple channels, especially if you're not quite sure who's listening where.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting. So I'm now thinking about the language, and a couple of people have kind of touched on this a little bit. You know, does the language you use make a difference when you market stuff? And in particular, I'm thinking about that kind of the first thing that they see, the title or the draw. So what's your thoughts on that, Rach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting the title and the first line right is absolutely critical to success, because in that very short time span, somebody is either intrigued enough to continue or they find out it's for them and they know what the call to action is. So I think it's incredibly important. And I think just to give some examples that people can resonate with is just think of your attention span the last time you Googled something. How many times did you just scan down the page and think, actually, none of those are what I'm looking for, I'm going to change my search term. If you didn't find anything that was using the language you were expecting or was an immediate hit, then you're going to move on. You can also think of the last time you read a mainstream media article. You know, BBC News app has the title and some bold text, and then you might flick on. CVs, cover letters are another great one. You're looking for things to jump out at you. So you need to be in that mindset when you're creating this content, and don't start with once upon a time, a long time ago. You know, that kind of feel. You need to be really sharp and have something remarkable that people hook onto.
Yeah, there we go. Zach's put it, hook story offer, keep it hook story offer. That's something actually I wanted to ask, to have a poll about this, but it's too much of an open question. So please just type in the chat box if you've got any advice on choosing titles for training programs. But I'd love to hear it. What hooks might you use, or do you use, to catch people's attention? You know, we did try and come up with an interesting title for this webinar, something that might make you want to learn more. But you kind of also got to make sure that it's meaningful, about people not only are interested, but actually have a sense of wanting to find out more. So if you've got any hints or tips in there, then that would be useful to hear. So I think I've got time for probably one last question, really, and I want to touch on the evaluation side of things, because I noticed in the handout that you've got a little heart around evaluation in red. So I know that must be important. Why is that?
So I love evaluation. Again, it's process, it's logic, it's finding out information and using that to learn from and base future decisions on. So it wasn't ever something that I knew very much about. So I actually got some training directly from the National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement about evaluation, and it's completely changed how I go about planning events, training, interactions with people. And I treat it as much of an evaluation plan that runs side by side with my project plan. So right from the outset, all the way along, how am I going to work out if this has worked? Because it's my justification to my funders, it's learning for future, finding out if something you're doing is working. It's really important to me that that people take evaluation seriously, and you know, I would love to have a session in the future about evaluation.
As you put your pitch in there, I want an evaluation session. Well, I think that goes back to that stuff about like the tracking links and stuff. Being able to actually know what is successful, what's working for people, what's reaching people is just massively important. And it's all about learning, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And evaluation, don't just think about it as a survey at the end. There's all types of evaluation, from the tracking links to just talking to people. Can be formative evaluation as you deliver the project, as you look at disseminating that marketing information. And the summative evaluation at the very end is for acting on next time and informing future decisions.
Okay. Okay, I think my last question, just any final comments or recommendations that you have?
I think my key pieces of advice would be, think about the marketing from the target participant's perspective. So what is it that you're going to offer them that will make them stop what they're doing on that day and attend? And if you get that right, then I think you're onto a winner. And when you're planning your content, prioritize the information. What do they need to know up front? What's going to make them think, this is something that I can't miss?
Nice and succinct. I like it. Okay, well, thank you ever so much for that, Rachel. That's been really interesting. Thank you for sharing your top tips and for creating a little handout for folk to be able to make use of. I think hopefully that'll be useful for people. How can people contact you if they would like to get in touch?
Feel free to email me, Rachel@skillfluence.co.uk. I'm also on LinkedIn. they would be the best ways.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, Rachel. That's been really interesting. We will catch up with you again, maybe on evaluation some point in the future. Thank you. Okay, so thanks very much to Rachel there. Some final thoughts from me on marketing. So let me just share my screen again with you. As we can see from all the discussion in the chat box, this is hard. There's lots of questions around it. It's a tough thing to do. So hopefully, please feel reassured that, there's lots of other people, facing these similar challenges. And it's particularly difficult at the moment because we're maybe having to find or rely more heavily on some channels to reach people than we used to in the past. I think there's been, we can't rely on bumping into someone to encourage them or remind them. So we have to find different ways of doing it. I think the fact that there's a process that you can use will help you to be more successful in your marketing. And I think what I would recommend is just, try some new things if you can, something different to see if it works or not. Something we've tried that's worked well is creating a landing page for our program. And what's been nice about that is that it's got more than one purpose. So we can use it to market to people interested in running a course, but we can also use it to advertise to potential participants who want to attend the course. So it's got that kind of added value. You can see there on the screen the link to the next CPD webinar. For this one, we're going to be talking about the voice of the industry. So we'll be hearing from business, from industry and social enterprises about why they take part in training with academics, what they're looking for, and what they'd like to see more of in future. If you open your camera on your mobile phone and just hold it up to the QR code, that weird looking code on the screen, it's amazing. I love these things. I just think it's super cool. It'll automatically recognize it without you having to do anything. You don't have to take a picture of anything. You'll just see it focus in and ask if you want to go to the page. Such a cool trick. We're also putting the link hopefully in the chat box. Yes, it's in there. So you can see there the chat box. We've got the link in there. If you like our webinars, why not thinking about signing up to our webinar mailing list, see the marketing that we have learned. It's the only way that you're guaranteed of finding out about the next one that it's on. And just to finish up, really, been so interesting to hear from Rachel today. Lots of fantastic questions from everyone. Thanks for the really good questions. Lots of interesting chat, which we'll share. Really hope that you found it useful. And as I said, hopefully gained a new idea, an insight, some learning, maybe an action or two, and also some reassurance that you're not on your own in this. When we finish up and when you leave, there's a 3-question evaluation. We always value your feedback. So please, if you do have the time, then do let us know what you think, or feel free to email me. It's been lovely having you all here. Thank you again to our wonderful speaker. Thanks to my colleagues, Joe and Zach, who've been making sure the webinar runs smoothly. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Please do keep in touch. If you have any questions, training queries, or ideas for future webinars, then do let me know. And if you'd like to find out more about us, then just email me at alison@skillfluence.co.uk. And I think I actually finished on time, so I'm very pleased with myself. Hope to see you at the next webinar. Thanks for joining us, and bye.